My wife announced she was spending the night with another man and walked out without explanation. I thought the affair was the worst betrayal possible, until I discovered what she'd really been planning all along. Some secrets don't just destroy marriages. They destroy everything you believed about the person sleeping next to you for years. My name is Winston Blair. I'm 42 years old, and I thought I had my life figured out. 3 successful Papa Giovanni's locations across suburban Dallas, a wife of 6 years, and 3-year-old twins Emma and Ethan, who light up my world. Sebastian, my son from my relationship with Sandra, was doing well at Texas A&M. Life seemed solid. The first real red flag came 3 months ago during Sebastian's spring break visit. Rachel had always been distant with him, but this time was different. She was openly hostile. "Winston, we need to talk about Sebastian's college expenses," Rachel said one evening after the twins were asleep. I looked up from my sales reports. "What about them?" "Everything's covered." "That's the problem," Rachel replied, crossing her arms. "Do you realize how much money you're throwing at him? Money that should go toward Emma and Ethan's future." The accusation stung. "Rachel, I've been supporting Sebastian since before we met. This isn't new." "Well, maybe it's time for new priorities," she said coldly. "Your real family should come first." Real family. Those words hit like a punch. Sebastian was as real as it gets to me. "Sebastian is my real family too, Rachel. He's my firstborn." She rolled her eyes and walked away, muttering something about how I'd never change. That night was the first time I noticed how she'd been pulling away. She spent the evening on her phone, texting someone with a little smile I hadn't seen directed at me in months. Over the following weeks, the pattern became clearer. Rachel would disappear for hours, claiming she was shopping or at the gym. When I'd call to check, they'd tell me she wasn't there. When I'd ask about purchases, she'd get defensive. The breaking point came last Tuesday. Sandra called about Sebastian's tuition payment being declined. When I checked our bank records, I felt the world shift. 3 large withdrawals over the past month, totaling nearly $15,000. Money earmarked for Sebastian's education. Gone. That night, I confronted Rachel. "Oh, that," she said casually, barely looking up from her laptop. "I move it to savings. We need to think about the twins' future instead of throwing money at your son's expensive education." The way she said, "your son," made my hands clench. "Rachel, that money was designated for Sebastian's tuition." "I'm discussing it with you now," she replied with infuriating calm. "Consider it discussed." I stood there staring at my wife, really seeing her for the first time in months. This wasn't the woman I'd married. This was someone cold and calculating. That was a week ago. Tonight, everything I thought I knew about my marriage came tumbling down. It was around 9:15 when Rachel walked into the living room. I was sitting on the couch, half watching some crime show while going through inventory reports for my Garland location. Emma and Ethan had been asleep for an hour, and the house felt quiet in that comfortable way it used to before everything started falling apart. Rachel stood in the doorway for a moment, and I could feel her eyes on me. When I looked up, she was holding her phone and car keys, dressed in that black dress she usually saved for special occasions. Her hair was done, makeup perfect, like she was heading somewhere important. "Hey babe," Rachel said, her voice too casual, too rehearsed. "I'm going out tonight." I muted the TV and turned to face her. "Out where?" "It's a Wednesday night." She shifted her weight from one foot to the other, that tell she had when she was about to lie. "Just meeting some friends. You know how it is." But I didn't know how it was. Rachel's friends were mostly other moms from the twins' daycare, and they didn't typically go out on weeknights. Something fell off about the whole thing. "Which friends?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral, even though my gut was screaming warnings. Rachel's jaw tightened slightly. "Doesn't matter. I'm just going out for a few drinks. I'll probably crash at Lisa's place since it's so late." Lisa. I met Lisa maybe twice in 6 years. She wasn't the type of friend Rachel would randomly stay overnight with. My hands gripped the remote tighter. "Rachel, what's really going on here?" She paused, gave me that strange look I couldn't read, like she was calculating something in her head. Then she said the words I would replay in my mind for hours afterward. "Look, Winston, I need to stay the night with someone tonight. I'll be back tomorrow afternoon." The room went completely silent. Even the TV seemed to fade into background noise. I stared at my wife, certain I'd misheard her, but the expression on her face told me I hadn't. "What did you just say?" My voice came out quieter than I expected. Rachel didn't flinch, didn't show any guilt or embarrassment. You heard me. I'm staying somewhere else tonight. With who? The question hung in the air between us. Does it really matter? She was already moving toward the door, acting like this conversation was over. I'll see you tomorrow. Rachel, wait. I stood up from the couch, my heart hammering. You can't just drop something like that and walk out. We need to talk about this. But she was already at the front door, keys jingling in her hand. There's nothing to talk about, Winston. This is just how things are now. And then she was gone. The door closed behind her with a soft click that seemed to echo through the entire house. I stood there in the living room, staring at that door, waiting for her to come back and tell me this was some kind of sick joke. She didn't come back. I sank back onto the couch, my mind racing. Had my wife just told me she was spending the night with another man? Had she really walked out of our house, away from our 3-year-old twins, to be with someone else? The remote was still in my hand, but I couldn't focus on the TV. All I could think about was that calm, almost cold way she delivered the news. Like she'd been planning this conversation, rehearsing it. 20 minutes passed, then 30. I kept expecting to hear her car pull back into the driveway, expecting her to walk through that door with some explanation that would make sense of all this. But the house stayed quiet, and Rachel stayed gone. An hour passed before I could think straight. I kept replaying Rachel's words, the casual way she delivered them, like she was discussing weekend plans instead of destroying our marriage. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my phone and called my brother Kevin. Winston, it's almost 11. Everything okay? No, everything's not okay, I said, my voice rougher than I intended. Rachel just walked out, said she's staying the night with someone else. Silence on the other end. Then Kevin let out a long breath. Jesus, man, I'm sorry. You wanted to come over? No, the twins are sleeping. But Kevin, I need to know what's going on. This isn't just tonight. She's been acting strange for months. What do you want to do? I looked around the empty living room, at the family photos on the mantle that suddenly felt like lies. I want to hire someone, a private investigator. I need to know how long this has been going on. You sure about that, Rao? Sometimes it's better not to know the details. I have to know, I said firmly. If she's been planning this, if she's been moving money around, lying to me for months, I need evidence, especially with the twins involved. The next morning, I dropped Emma and Ethan at daycare and drove straight to the office of a PI that Kevin had recommended. The guy's name was Frank Patterson, a former cop who specialized in marital cases. Mr. Blair, Frank said, shaking my hand with a firm grip. Your brother filled me in on the basics. Tell me what you need. I explained everything. The missing money, the late nights, the phone calls, and finally last night's announcement. Frank took notes without judgment, nodding occasionally. Here's what I can do, Frank said when I finished. I'll start with financial records. See if there are accounts or transactions you don't know about. Then I'll follow her movements, document who she's meeting with. Usually takes about a week to build a clear picture. How much? I asked. $2,000 for a full investigation. But Mr. Blair, let me ask you something. What's your endgame here? You looking to save the marriage or protect yourself in a divorce? I stared at him for a long moment. Yesterday, I might have said save the marriage. Today, after seeing the cold indifference in Rachel's eyes, the answer was different. Protect myself, I said. And my kids. Frank nodded. Smart man. I'll get started today. That evening, Rachel came home around 6, acting like nothing had happened. She walked into the front door like she owned the place, kissed Emma and Ethan hello, and started preparing dinner as if she hadn't just spent the night with another man. How was your day? She asked me, not meeting my eyes. Fine, I replied, watching her carefully. How was yours? Good. Lisa and I grabbed brunch, then I did some shopping. Lisa again, the same friend she'd supposedly stayed with. I made a mental note to have Frank check that story. Rachel, we need to talk about last night. She paused in chopping vegetables. What about it? You can't just announce you're staying with someone else and expect me to be okay with it. Rachel turned to face me, her expression flat. Winston, we're adults. Sometimes people need space. That's all this is. Space. She was calling adultery space. And if I said I needed space too? What then? For the first time, I saw something flicker in her eyes. Annoyance, maybe even anger. That's different. Ow, because it just is. That night, after the twins were in bed, I sat in my home office and started going through every financial document I could find. If Frank was right about hidden accounts, maybe I could find traces of them myself. What I discovered made my blood run cold. 3 hours of digging through financial records revealed a pattern I'd been blind to. Small withdrawals from our joint account over the past 6 months, always for amounts under $500. Individually, they looked innocuous: grocery runs, gas, shopping trips. Together, they added up to nearly $12,000. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was finding a credit card statement I'd never seen before, issued in Rachel's name only. The address on file was a P.O. box I didn't recognize. Designer clothes, expensive restaurants, hotel charges, all from the past 4 months. One hotel charge caught my attention: the Fairmont downtown, 3 nights ago. The same night Rachel claimed she was visiting her sister in Fort Worth. My hands were shaking as I photographed the documents with my phone. This wasn't a sudden decision on Rachel's part. This was calculated, planned, systematic deception. The next morning, after dropping the twins at daycare, I called Frank Patterson. "I found something," I said without preamble. "Secret credit card, hotel charges, cash withdrawals. How fast can you move on this?" "Give me the details," Frank said. I could hear him typing as I read off the information. "Mr. Blair, this is good work. With this kind of paper trail, I can probably have a full picture by tomorrow. Where are you now?" "Driving to my Plano location." "What?" "Meet me there in an hour. I've got some preliminary information that might interest you." An hour later, Frank walked into my restaurant carrying a manila folder. We sat in my back office while my manager handled the lunch rush. "Your wife's been busy," Frank said, opening the folder. "Devin Walsh, 34, works in commercial real estate, drives a BMW, lives in a condo in Addison. And according to my sources, he's been seeing a married woman for the past 5 months." My stomach dropped. 5 months. This had been going on for 5 months while I was oblivious, working my tail off to support our family. "There's more," Frank continued. "That hotel charge you found, I checked with their security. Your wife was there with Walsh. They've been regulars." I stared at the photographs Frank had taken. Rachel entering the hotel with a tall, well-dressed man. The timestamp showed last Tuesday, the day she claimed to be shopping. "What do you want to do next?" Frank asked. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. A text from Rachel: "Working late tonight. Don't wait up." I looked at Frank and made a decision that would change everything. Follow her tonight. I want to know exactly where she goes, who she sees, everything. And Frank, I want it all documented. "You got it. But Mr. Blair, once we go down this road, there's no going back. You sure you're ready for what we might find?" I thought about Emma and Ethan, about the college money Rachel had stolen from Sebastian, about 5 months of lies and betrayal. "I'm ready." Frank's call came at 7:30 the next morning. I was making breakfast for Emma and Ethan when my phone buzzed. "Winston, you need to see this," Frank said without preamble. "Can you meet me at my office in an hour?" "What did you find?" "Pictures, financial records, and something else that's going to make your blood boil." After dropping the twins at daycare, I drove to Frank's office with my stomach in knots. He was waiting with a thick folder spread across his desk. "Sit down," Frank said. "This is going to be rough." The photographs hit me first. Rachel entering hotels with Devin Walsh. The two of them at restaurants I'd never heard of. Shopping together at stores I couldn't afford. All time-stamped over the past 5 months. "But this is the real kicker," Frank said, sliding a document across the desk. "She opened a joint checking account with him 3 months ago. They've been depositing money regularly, including some that came from your business accounts." My hand shook as I studied the bank statements. 1,500 here, 2,000 there, all flowing from our joint accounts into this secret account she shared with her lover. "There's more," Frank continued. "Walsh isn't just some random guy. He's married too. Wife, 2 kids. He's been playing both sides. And from what I can tell, he's done this before." "How do you know?" "His ex-wife hired me 2 years ago during their divorce. Same pattern, secret accounts, hotel meetings, emotional manipulation. Guy's a predator who targets married women." I stared at the evidence spread before me, feeling something cold settle in my chest. This wasn't just an affair. This was systematic fraud, emotional manipulation, and theft. Rachel wasn't just cheating. She was robbing our family to fund her fantasy life with a con man. "What's my next move?" I asked. "Confront her tonight. But Winston, record the conversation on your phone. If this goes to court, we need her admitting to the financial impropriety. That evening, I waited until the twins were asleep before approaching Rachel in the living room. She was on her laptop, probably planning her next rendezvous. "We need to talk," I said, sitting across from her. She looked up with that practiced innocence. "About what?" I pulled out one of Frank's photographs and placed it on the coffee table between us. "About this." Rachel's face went white. For the first time in months, I saw a genuine emotion, panic, fear, and something that might have been shame. "Winston, I can explain." "Explain what?" "How you've been stealing money from our family to pay for hotel rooms with your boyfriend. How you opened a secret bank account with him. How about explaining Devin Walsh's wife and kids?" Rachel's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. "How did you?" "Private investigator. Amazing what you can find when you actually start looking." She stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. "You and me followed? That's sick, Winston. That's paranoid and controlling." I almost laughed at her audacity. "I'm controlling? Rachel, you stole $15,000 from our accounts. You've been lying to my face for 5 months while funding an affair with a married con man." "He's not a con man," she snapped, then immediately realized her mistake. "So you admit it. You admit you've been having an affair and stealing money to pay for it." Rachel turned to face me, and for the first time, I saw the real her. Not the loving wife and mother, not the woman I'd married, but someone cold and calculating who'd been using me all along. "Yes," she said defiantly, "and I don't regret it." Rachel's admission hung in the air between us like a live wire. I'd expected denials, excuses, maybe even tears. I hadn't expected this cold defiance. "You don't regret it," I repeated, making sure my phone was still recording. "No, I don't," Rachel said, crossing her arms. "Do you want to know why? Because for the first time in years, I feel alive. Devin makes me feel like a woman, not just a mother and a wife. And our children? What about Emma and Ethan? What about the family we built together?" Rachel's laugh was bitter. "What family, Winston? You work 16 hours a day at those pizza places. When you're home, you're either on the phone with suppliers or obsessing over Sebastian and his college expenses. Sebastian is my son. Sebastian is a financial drain." Rachel shot back. "Do you know how much money you've wasted on him over the years? Money that should have gone to our children, our future." The contempt in her voice when she spoke about Sebastian made my hands clench into fists. "That boy is not a waste. He's my firstborn, and I'll support him until the day I die." "Well, maybe you won't have to much longer," Rachel said with a smirk that chilled my blood. "What's that supposed to mean?" She walked to her purse and pulled out a manila envelope. "Divorce papers. I'm filing tomorrow. And Winston, I'm going for half of everything. The restaurants, the house, custody of the twins. Devin's lawyer says I have an excellent case." I stared at the envelope, pieces clicking together in my mind. This whole thing was planned. The affair, the stealing, even this conversation. "You've been setting me up. I've been protecting myself," Rachel said. "You're so focused on your precious Sebastian and your business that you forgot about your real family. So I found someone who puts me first. By stealing from us. By lying for months. By securing my future," she replied coldly. "Devin and I have been planning this for weeks. We're moving to Colorado together, and the twins are coming with us. The thought of my children being taken across state lines by this woman and her conman boyfriend filled me with rage unlike anything I'd ever experienced. "Over my dead body," I said quietly. Rachel's eyes narrowed. "Try to stop me, Winston. I have evidence of your neglect, your obsession with work, your favoritism toward Sebastian. No judge will give custody to a man who cares more about his pizza shops than his own children." I stood up slowly, my mind crystal clear for the first time in months. "Rachel, you made one critical mistake in all this planning." "What's that?" "You assumed I was stupid. You thought you could steal from me, lie to me, and manipulate me without consequences. But I've been documenting everything for the past week." Her confident expression faltered slightly. "What are you talking about?" "The private investigator. The financial records. The photographs of you and Devin. The proof that you opened fraudulent accounts using marital funds. And this conversation, which I've been recording on my phone." Rachel's face went white. "You can't use that in court. It's illegal to record someone without consent. Actually, in Texas, only one party needs to consent to recording a conversation. I just consented to recording myself talking to my cheating wife. For the first time since this nightmare began, I saw fear in Rachel's eyes. Real, genuine fear. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. You're going to pack your things tonight and leave. You're not taking the twins anywhere. And if you try to claim half my business, I'll make sure every detail of your affair and financial fraud becomes public record. Rachel stared at me for a long moment, realizing that her carefully planned exit strategy had just collapsed around her. You bastard, she whispered. No, Rachel. I'm just a man who finally stopped being played for a fool. The next morning, I was already at my lawyer's office when the doors opened. Mark Thompson had handled my business and corporation years ago, but now I needed his family law expertise more than ever. Winston, based on what you've told me, your wife made a critical error, Mark said, reviewing Frank's evidence file. She committed financial fraud during the marriage. That changes everything. How so? Texas law doesn't look kindly on spouses who steal marital assets to fund affairs. The court can award you more than half the marital property as compensation. Plus, her behavior works against her in custody proceedings. Mark spread the documents across his desk, bank records, photographs, the recorded conversation. She admitted to the affair, to taking the money, and to planning to move your children out of state. Any competent judge will see this as parental alienation. What's my next move? We file first. Today, emergency custody orders to prevent her from taking Emma and Ethan anywhere. Temporary restraining orders on all accounts. And Winston, we're going to ask for spousal support from her. From her? How does that work? Mark smiled grimly. She's been funding a lavish lifestyle with your money. She has a job, assets, and an established pattern of financial irresponsibility. The court can order her to pay you support, especially if you get primary custody. 2 hours later, a sheriff's deputy was at my door with papers for Rachel. I watched from the kitchen as she signed for them, her face going white as she read. Winston. Rachel stormed into the kitchen, papers in hand. What is this? Legal protection for me and the children. You froze our accounts. How am I supposed to buy groceries? I looked at her calmly. The same way you've been buying hotel rooms and fancy dinners, with your secret credit cards. Rachel's mouth opened and closed. I need access to money for Emma and Ethan. They're with me now. The emergency custody order gives me temporary full custody until the hearing. You can't do this. I already did. And Rachel, there's something else you should know. I pulled out another document. Devin Walsh's wife filed for divorce yesterday. Seems someone sent her copies of Frank's photographs. She's naming you as correspondent. Rachel sank into a chair, the reality finally hitting her. Her perfect plan was falling apart. This isn't over, she said weakly. You're right. It's not. But you're not holding the cards anymore. That evening, after putting Emma and Ethan to bed, I called Sebastian. Dad, how are things going? Better than expected, son. I wanted you to know, Rachel won't be interfering with your college expenses anymore. What happened? Let's just say the truth came out. Your tuition is secure, and I'm proud of you for hanging in there. Thanks, Dad. I love you. Love you too, Sebastian. For the first time in months, I felt like I was protecting my family instead of watching it fall apart. The divorce hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks later, but Rachel's lawyer called 2 days beforehand, requesting a settlement conference. She wants to negotiate, Mark explained. Her attorney knows they can't win a trial with the evidence we have. We met in a sterile conference room downtown. Rachel sat across from me with her lawyer, looking nothing like the confident woman who'd walked out on our family. Devin Walsh was nowhere to be seen. My client is prepared to accept a reasonable settlement, Rachel's attorney began. Mark slid a document across the table. These are our terms. Your client gets 20% of marital assets, no custody of the minor children, and pays Mr. Blair monthly support for 2 years. Rachel's face flushed. 20%? That's ridiculous. Your client stole marital funds to conduct an affair, Mark replied coolly. She's lucky we're not seeking criminal charges for fraud. What about Emma and Ethan? Rachel asked. They're my children too. Supervised visitation every other weekend, I said firmly. And only after you complete parenting classes and counseling. Rachel looked at her lawyer desperately. He shrugged. Mrs. Blair, given the evidence, this is actually generous. If we go to trial, you could lose everything. After an hour of back and forth, Rachel signed the agreement. As we left the conference room, she grabbed my arm. Winston, I'm sorry. I never meant for things to go this far. I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt nothing but pity. Rachel, you made your choices. Now you get to live with them. 3 months later, my life had found new rhythm. Emma and Ethan were thriving with the stability of a single routine. Sebastian had started his sophomore year with full financial support. My restaurants were doing better than ever. Turns out I worked more efficiently when I wasn't constantly worried about my marriage. Rachel's relationship with Devin had ended predictably. Once his wife took half his assets in their divorce, he lost interest in supporting someone else's expensive lifestyle. Rachel was working retail and living in a studio apartment, a far cry from the glamorous life she'd envisioned. The best part was the unexpected support I'd received. Sandra, Sebastian's mother, had reached out during the divorce proceedings. Winston, I know we had our differences, but I want you to know I respect how you handled this situation, she'd said. You protected your children and your family. That takes real strength. Even some of Rachel's friends had contacted me privately, apologizing for not speaking up when they knew about the affair. We should have told you, Claire had admitted. But Rachel convinced us you were just a workaholic who didn't care about her anymore. I was sitting in my home office one evening, reviewing expansion plans for a 4th restaurant location, when Emma ran in with a drawing. Daddy, look, it's our family. The picture showed me, Emma, Ethan, and Sebastian standing in front of our house, all smiling. No Rachel in sight. It's perfect, sweetheart, I said, hanging it on the wall next to my business awards. Sometimes the family you choose is stronger than the one you inherit. 1 year later, I stood in the kitchen of my new house, watching Emma and Ethan help Sebastian make pancakes. We'd moved 6 months ago. The old house held too many memories of Rachel's betrayal. This place felt like a fresh start. Dad, can I flip this one? Ethan asked, holding the spatula with serious concentration. Go for it, buddy, Sebastian said, guiding his little brother's hands. Just like I showed you. It amazed me how naturally Sebastian had stepped into his role as big brother. After the divorce, he'd chosen to transfer to UT Dallas to be closer to us. His relationship with Emma and Ethan had blossomed without Rachel's interference. Winston, Sandra called from the living room. The kids are ready for the zoo. Sandra and I have been dating for 8 months now. It felt strange at first, reconnecting with Sebastian's mother after all these years. But we'd both grown and changed since our early 20s. She understood my priorities because she shared them, putting our children first. Coming, I replied, then turned to Sebastian. You sure you don't want to join us? Thanks, but I've got a study group this afternoon. Besides, you two deserve some time together. Sebastian had matured incredibly over the past year. The stability of knowing his education was secure, combined with watching me stand up for our family, had given him confidence I'd never seen before. My phone buzzed with a text from Frank Patterson. Devin Walsh arrested for fraud. Thought you'd want to know. I showed the message to Sebastian, who whistled low. Guess Rachel really knew how to pick them. Your stepmother made her choices. Now she lives with the consequences. Rachel had struggled over the past year. Without my financial support or Devin's resources, she'd been forced to face reality. She saw Emma and Ethan every other weekend, but the supervised visits were awkward and strained. The children had adapted better than I'd expected. Kids are resilient when they have stability. Dad, Emma said, tugging on my shirt, are you and Miss Sandra getting married? I looked at my daughter's hopeful face, then at Sandra in the doorway. We talked about it, but hadn't rushed anything. Both of us had learned the importance of taking relationships slowly. Maybe someday, sweetheart. Would you like that? Yes. Then Sebastian would really be our brother. Sebastian laughed, ruffling Emma's hair. I'm already your brother, silly. I don't need a wedding for that. As we headed out for our day at the zoo, I reflected on how dramatically my life had changed. The pizza franchises were more successful than ever. I'd opened a 4th location and was considering expanding to Oklahoma. Most importantly, I'd learned to trust my instincts and protect what mattered most. Sometimes you have to lose everything to discover what's truly valuable. 2 years after the divorce, I was sitting in my office at the flagship restaurant when my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize. Winston Blair speaking. Winston, it's Rachel. I hadn't heard her voice in 6 months. What do you need? I wanted to apologize. Really apologize this time. Not just because my lawyer told me to. I leaned back in my chair, genuinely curious. Go ahead. I've been in therapy for the past year, working through a lot of issues about self-worth and making destructive choices. I realize now how badly I hurt you and the children. And Sebastian, especially Sebastian. I was jealous of him, jealous of your relationship with him. That was wrong and petty. I could hear genuine regret in her voice. Where is this coming from, Rachel? Devin was convicted last week. Fraud, embezzlement, tax evasion. He's going to prison for 5 years. My lawyer says some of his other victims might sue me as an accomplice. So this was partly about legal troubles. But there was something else in her tone, genuine remorse. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, and meant it. Winston, I know I have no right to ask, but would you consider letting me have more time with Emma and Ethan? Not unsupervised, not overnight, just more time to try to rebuild something with them. I thought about my children, who were thriving in their stable environment. Emma was excelling in pre-K, and Ethan had overcome the behavioral issues he developed during the chaotic final months of our marriage. I'll discuss it with my lawyer and think about it. But Rachel, any increased contact depends on you staying in therapy and proving you're genuinely changed. I understand. And Winston, congratulations on your engagement to Sandra. Sebastian told me during his last visit. Thank you. She's good for you. She always was, even back when we were kids. I'm sorry it took me so long to see that. After hanging up, I sat quietly for a few minutes. People could change, but they had to want it badly enough to do the hard work. Maybe Rachel was finally ready for that work. That evening, I came home to find Sandra helping Emma with the art project while Ethan and Sebastian play video games. This was my family now, not the one I planned originally, but the one that had emerged from honesty and mutual respect. How was your day? Sandra asked, kissing my cheek. Interesting. Rachel called. I filled her in on the conversation while we prepared dinner together. Sandra listened without judgment, one of the many qualities I loved about her. What do you think? I asked. I think people deserve chances to make amends, especially with their children, but slowly and with boundaries. That night, as I tucked Emma and Ethan into bed, Emma asked, Daddy, will you tell us the story about how you and Sebastian saved our family? It had become their favorite bedtime story, a simplified version of how we'd all come together after some difficult times. I told them about courage, about standing up for what's right, and about how families can be rebuilt stronger than before. The end, I finished, kissing them both goodnight. Daddy, Ethan said sleepily, I'm glad you're our hero. Walking down the hall, I stopped by Sebastian's room. He was studying at his desk, but looked up when I knocked. Thanks for being such a great big brother, I said. Thanks for showing me what it means to be a strong man, he replied. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't defeating your enemies. It's building something better from the pieces they left behind.